Hello guys, good evening and welcome back to another exciting Doctor Who review. Now last time we did the review on Doctor Who and the Silurians, but now we are moving on to another underrated story which from many people's perspectives they seem this story as to be the weakest from season 7. But honestly, I think this story has some brilliant moments in it. Certainly has great action, good plot development, great characterization, but I think what kind of let it down is that the amount of writers to write this story, because the writing was a big problem for this story. But I certainly think it's still brilliant overall, and it is The Ambassadors of Death. Now, apologies if I ever cough. I mean, I have a sore throat today and I haven't been feeling too well, but I really want to get this review out of the way with because I really want this YouTube channel to go much further, and so I'm trying to do literally a review every single day, and I have seen The Ambassadors about 3 times now to get this review in my head. But I have to say that The Ambassadors of Death is truly underrated, but as I said again, what let it down on is that the writing. There was 3 writers who wrote this story. The original writer was David Whittaker, and he only wrote episode 1, and the other 2 writers, Malcolm Hulke and Trevor Ray, they both wrote all the rest of the episodes as well as along with Terrence Dicks as well. So there were quite a lot of writers in this, which I sort of understand that David Whittaker was a bit unwilling to continue the story. He didn't like most of his ideas, or most of the scripts weren't brilliant enough, and so he had to scrap those ideas and he couldn't really continue his legacy. And so I felt sorry for David Whittaker, but I think episode 1 was the most engaging episode from The Ambassadors of Death. But I believe that this story has some brilliant moments, and I think Malcolm Hulke and Trevor Ray do a brilliant job to continue David Whittaker's masterpiece. If David Whittaker continued to write the story, you never know, this could even be better than Doctor Who and Silurians. But I would have to say that the writing does let it down a bit. But I have to say there are some great elements in this. Certainly the action in this. The action scenes are absolutely brilliant, and even so the organisation that actually does all the fight scenes and the stunts, Havoc, being introduced in this story, and also they're also revealed in the credits of the action done by Havoc. It's basically an organisation that does all of the acting and action for Doctor Who, and I can certainly say that Havoc and all of the people who did the fight scenes in episodes 1, 2 and 7 are absolutely fantastic. I really loved the fight scenes and the action in it, really powerful, and it really got people into the story, and it made the story more enjoyable to watch. And that certainly really raised up the viewing figures for the story, and I certainly love this story, and I think the entire plot really develops between every single episode. There's so many suspicions, so many different, interesting characters you have. You've got the Doctor, who's quite determined to hopefully find these astronauts and make peace with these alien beings, these ambassadors. And I think the villains in this are always so suspicious, and even so, they easily cover up their game really effectively. So they prevent other people from noticing what they're actually doing. And so that's what I like the villains in this. They always cover up their game to prevent other people from noticing. So that's what I really like. But anyway, let's get into the review of The Ambassadors of Death. Written by David Whittaker, Malcolm Hulke and Trevor Ray. Something has gone seriously wrong with Mars Probe 7, with no contact from the astronauts since the rocket had started its return journey from Mars. Space Control is now extremely worried about the fate of the crew. A rescue mission recovers something, but whatever it is, it certainly isn't human. To find out what has happened to the astronauts, the Doctor must head into space without the TARDIS. Now, our Space Control, in the beginning, in the introduction of episode 1, they introduce us to the cause straight away of what's happened. These 3 astronauts missing at Mars Probe 7 have no contact whatsoever for 12 months, and then they send up a recovery capsule to investigate what has going on between these conspiracies, and what they actually found was a beaming signal that was almost like transmitting from Mars Probe 7 down to Earth, and it really affected the minds of everybody at Space Control. And they really wondered like what it was, some kind of form of static, or it was a new kind of static. And even so, the Doctor was really interested with the Mars probe, and it was really watching the TV on what was going on. But even so, in the beginning of episode 1, he made a sulky comment about the previous story, Doctor Who and Silurians, and he was basically like moaning about and commenting a sulky comment to the Brigadier what he's doing at space control. He's got to occupy his mind, and now he's blown up the Silurians. That was the sulky comment I made, and I really liked that, of how the Doctor still had that guilt from blowing up the Silurians, and now he still has that guilt. And so that's what I like about that, because it really refers back to what's happened in the previous story. That's what I really like, to keep the people up to date as to already what happened. But I think with the plot in this story is actually so strong, and I think it's one of the best plot developments throughout Doctor Who, and I think it's really, really strong in my opinion, because although with 7 episodes it may seem a bit draggy, but I watched this in one full go and I absolutely loved it a bit. I never got bored of it. There were so many suspicions and so many clues and so much evidence you can identify. It was really interesting to watch and see all of these clues add up and answer the questions in my head. It was really fantastic. As we with episode 1, I would have to say that the Doctor was quite interested, because he recognised the sound what was transmitted from Mars Probe 7. He felt that it was almost like a message which he had to decode, but then suddenly a new kind of high frequency impulse came from Earth instead, which actually was a reply instead, which that made the Doctor more curious to find where that reply was coming from. And he was so determined from the start, but also he was quite aggressive with Professor Cornish, because he at that time said that nobody has any point to do anything now, because the Doctor is quite worried about this space probe, but also he gets quite aggressive towards Professor Cornish first, because he's introduced straight away, and Professor Cornish was like, who is this man? I was like, he's one of my associates. And then the Doctor was being a bit aggressive, like saying, this man's a fool. And then the Brigadier made the sulky like, might find me useful. And so the Doctor was getting quite aggressive towards Professor Cornish and the Brigadier, from lashing out some sulky comments towards the Doctor, as he's already lost up, the Silurians from the previous story. So he has some anger which he wants to release out. But I feel like the Doctor is absolutely brilliant in this. It's so engaging, and I think the entire episode 1 is really engaging, introducing us to the cause straight away, and keeps us on our seats for many more interesting scenes to come, especially with the fight scene that happens in between episode 1. I love that fight scene, and I think where Unit drives to that abandoned warehouse, and the music, oh my gosh. If you are big fans of the Unit music, then please give this video a like, and also please comment down below. Please tell me, do you like that music from Unit? I absolutely love that theme, and it was playing in every single episode of where there was some action. I absolutely loved it. I was so brilliant. It was felt more of a soundtrack that really suited Unit, and with all the soldiers and all the guns and the higher authority, I really like the soundtrack. I think it's brilliant, really so much a brilliant piece of music. I absolutely love it, and you never know, for many future reviews I could actually have that music in my intro, you never know, but it's certainly a great theme. And certainly with the action in this, so brilliant directing in this, and Michael Ferguson, who also directed The Seeds of Death. I would have to say that this story is morally his best piece of work for directing so much brilliant action. And I think Havoc, of course, especially Havoc, they are absolutely fantastic in this. I think Derek Ware, who's the founder of Havoc, he really introduced on how Havoc was really almost like an organisation to help out with professional stuntmen to do some, disastrous and much dangerous stunts, and he was really fantastic. And also Derek Ware was actually a character in the story, really helping out with more of the action. The action scenes were really fantastic, and I think my favourite one had to be episode 2, because episode 2, they were trying to retrieve the space capsule from the landing point all the way back to space control, but instead they got jumped by suspicious characters like General Carrington. Now, here's my question about General Carrington. He feels like more of the powerful and much higher authoritative character in this. I think the characterization in this story is just so fantastic, with his arrogance and his obedience towards other soldiers, as well as to the Brigadier. He doesn't feel intimidated by the Brigadier or by the Doctor. He feels so arrogant, so obedient and really aggressive to everybody else. He really feels like that he's the person in control and he can take care of the situation. He is so forceful and so aggressive. He can really punch anybody if he gets so angry. And so he feels like that the top dog, person with the higher authority. I really like this character and I think his authority really stood out for most of the story. He was really fantastic, and also although he had his character was on and off between episodes 1 and 2, but he felt more of a suspicious character to look out for, because in episode 1 he was the one who was actually sending those replies back to Mars Probe 7. And he actually wanted to send the messages to the spaceship or to Mars Probe 7 to bring down 3 ambassadors and calls them. And so that's what I really liked about General Carrington, and his story of how he went on Mars Probe 6 and how he encountered these mysterious astronauts really explained in episode 7, where he was interrogating the Doctor, but instead right at that end when he was looking at the ambassadors and talking to the Doctor, he was more like getting his kind of sentimental explanation of why he met and how he met these 3 ambassadors at Mars Probe 6. And so he explained on how he met them and how he, you know, his fellow teammate or his fellow friend got killed by these ambassadors, and now these ambassadors has walked right into his trap, and he really wants to call up all the nations of the world and destroy the ambassadors and completely use these ambassadors for the General's purposes, because I think the General is absolutely insane, and I think he goes really insane by episodes 5, 6 and 7, because he completely wants a full-scale war on the alien spaceship with the ambassadors in hand. And so I really feel like that General, although he's quite suspicious in the first episode and gets really aggressive and very forceful in high authority throughout the entire story. And I think in episode 7 does explain why he, you know, has been to Mars Probe 6 and encountered these ambassadors, and now the ambassadors have walked right straight into his trap, and now General Carrington's so determined to call up all the nations of the world and call out a mass-scale war to destroy and obliterate the ambassadors and their spaceship and completely wipe out an alien species. And so General Carrington really feels like he wants revenge on these ambassadors for destroying his friend, and he really feels like that it is his job, his moral duty, to protect the Earth and destroy these ambassadors and the aliens once and for all. So I really admire his ability and also his moral duty to help save the world, of course, but I would have to say his obedience and his aggressiveness really plays out throughout the entire story. It makes people really intimidated. So I think General Carrington is actually my favourite character in the story. He's so obedient, so aggressive, and I think he's just brilliant in this. I'm not sure who the actor who plays General Carrington, but he is absolutely brilliant in this. And also I have to say that with General Carrington planning this entire organisation, he really organises everything from the get-go. Even from episode 1 to episode 2, you can almost identify that people have, or General Carrington and his immediate staff, have pre-planned this way before Ralph Cornish, the Brigadier and the Doctor. Before, when they completely organised a plan to steal the 3 missing astronauts and use them for their own purposes. And he's pre-planned this way beyond before the Brigadier, the Doctor and Professor Cornish. And so he is one step ahead of everybody else. And that's what I like. He is so ahead of everybody else, and he knows what his moral duty must be to help save the world and stop these aliens from coming to Earth and causing an invasion. So that's what I really like about his character. He's so suspicious and yet so malicious as well. Really powerful character. And I have to say that within episode 1, I think this story really builds up so much suspense and it really engages the viewers. For many people, I think episode 1 is really fantastic, and to many people's eyes, they seem episode 1 is the strongest. Written by David Whittaker, who does really fantastic writing, and his writing is so strong. But I think as he's left the other episodes blank and he couldn't really continue them all, I think some of the episodes, for many people's perspectives, they didn't really have as much strength within each episode. But I really love every single episode in this. I think they're all really engaging, have so many fight scenes between each episode, and it really builds up so much great suspense. The Doctor and the Brigadier really have a great bonding between each other, and in this episode they don't really fight at all. They merely agree with each other, and so they really get on really well, and their bond really strengthens up within this story. In every single episode, whenever they have a little discussion, they really agree with each other and they really get along with each other. So that's why I really like how their bond, how their relationship is now well established, from the Silurians not being yet completely established. But now in this story, I really feels like that the Doctor really can cooperate with the Brigadier really easily, and I really feel like that the Doctor relies on the Brigadier to help with the authority and the action and the soldiers. And so that's what I really like now, how their relationship is now really strengthened up from the last previous story. I certainly think that the Brigadier is really good, and I think episode 1 is where his brilliant fight scene was absolutely brilliant. And I think there was one scene of where he got his gun and he shot somebody, and then the person who got shot completely fell to the floor by a pile of stairs. He was so high up and completely fell to the ground on his face. That guy must have been so brilliant and must have been a professional stuntman just to fall like that and just completely woo. To be honest with you, it must have been so hilarious just to see that guy fall down. My gosh, he must have been a really good stuntman just to do that. But that would have hurt if I did it. But definitely, I think the Brigadier is absolutely brilliant in this with all the action. I think he does every single piece of action whenever possible, because whenever, of course, whenever the unit theme turns on, and then you see, you know, armies or, you know, trucks or jeeps going into a location, and then you hear that music, you honestly know that there's going to be a fight scene straight after this music ends. And so that's what I really like, and I think that it's just brilliant. Now, with the relationships and the characters in this, I really believe that Dr. Tartalian, the idiotic, non-cooperative character who doesn't get along with the Doctor at all, in episode 1 they really like meet up, but then even so, in the end they be uncooperative with each other, and Dr. Tartalian actually feels really scared of the Doctor. Like, the Doctor could suspect that Dr. Tartalian could be working with General Carrington, and eventually General Carrington actually revealed that Dr. Tartalian was actually under orders from General Carrington, and so he was actually following General Carrington's orders for some purpose to prevent the Doctor from using the computer. But what I really like about Dr. Tartalian is that he almost feels like that the weak link in the story. Like, he feels so scared and so nervous when he's talking to the Doctor. Like, the Doctor could always suspect him of what he's hiding, and so that's what I really like. But even so, the Doctor's he's so uncooperative with Dr. Tartalian, but yeah, even so, figures out what Dr. Tartalian is hiding from. That's what I really like, and I definitely think that Dr. Tartalian is the weak link in this story. Honestly, I think out of all the 3 villains, you've got General Carrington, you've got Dr. Tartalian, you've also got Regan, and also you've got Sir James Quinlan. Now, Sir James Quinlan, I'm not sure about his character. I think his character's good. I think he only appears in episodes 2, 3 and 4, but that's where his character stops as he gets killed off by an ambassador. But I think his character is so confidential. Like, he keeps all of the information confidential, and he really sweeps off, you know, any suspicions under the carpet, just as the Doctor would say. So he really, like, keeps all of his secrets to himself, very selfish of himself, and he just wants to glow just to encounter an alien species. So I really think his character's good, but I would have to say Dr. Tartalian, his character is the weakest link, because he's very scared of the Doctor, and with that, the Doctor could easily suspect him of him being in on with General Carrington and with Regan and helping to kidnap the astronauts and kidnap the Shaw. So I would literally suspect that he is working for General Carrington and his devious plans. So that's my opinion. I also really feel like that Regan is really brilliant in this. I feel like that his character is so slick, you could hardly notice him in every single episode, but I think he becomes situated within episodes 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, where he tries to sabotage the Doctor from going into space. And what I really like about Regan is that he has some kind of brutal arrogance about him, that you can never trust him, because even so, when he was trying to kidnap the astronauts from the place where General Counter was actually hiding the astronauts, he actually took them away, and he actually he actually said to two bodyguards of his, went into the van with the ambassadors and automatically got killed. So you can't really trust Regan at all, so he's very suspicious, and he's quite selfish for himself. Like, he really wants to use these ambassadors as killers for his own game, like breaking into Fort Knox, and so that's what his own games were. So he doesn't really have any formal plans to help General Counter. He really wants just to use these ambassadors for money, really. So that's what his ultimate game is. But what I like about Regan is that he covers up his game and covers his identity really, really effectively. Like in the scene of episode 3 of where he drops off those two bodies and he covers them in gravel. And then straight after that, he drives in a van, and then suddenly he changes the license plate and also the brand banner of the van as well. So that's what I really like about Regan. He can cover up his game and he cover up his grounds really, really effectively. And nobody really suspects him as him being a master criminal and a massive sabotager, because he is. He managed to sabotage the fuel bay as the Doctor was about to blast off into space to help save the astronauts from Mars Probe 7. And even so, he tried to sabotage the decontamination units to kidnap the Doctor, and so he can use the Doctor for his own devious plans to build up a machine that can actually talk to the ambassadors quite easily, because the Doctor was actually planning to make a machine to talk to these ambassadors, but he never got the chance to do it. But Dr. Tartalian had a much simpler version that the Doctor was actually trying to make. But I really felt that the Doctor was actually brilliant in this. He was so engaging, he was really, really nice to everybody else, really helpful towards Professor Cornish, and he really offered his service towards Professor Cornish. Like, he even offered himself to take up the rocket into Mars Probe 7. So he really felt that as he has the best knowledge in space travel, he was the perfect man to go up into the recovery capsule to Mars Probe 7. And that's what I really like, and his determination, his confidence really built up within this entire story. But I think his arrogance really built up between Dr. Tartalian and also with Regan and General Counter as well. So he doesn't really like all of the villains in this. He seems quite suspicious of every single character. But yes, so really gets, quite nervous of when things don't go his way, and so he's quite nervous of how this saboteur keeps interfering. And even so, Regal is actually getting quite annoyed with the Doctor, how he kept surviving all this time. From no matter how many times Regan sabotaged something else, the Doctor will always survive. And Regal is quite impressed of how the Doctor survived these many times. So that's what I really like about Regan. He's so slick, and he moves quite swiftly in every single episode. You can't really notice him, but I really like his personality. He's quite brutal, but yet again, very arrogant within his personality. So definitely one character to keep an eye on. And I would have to say that the relationships in this, or the characterization in this story, are absolutely brilliant. And I think Liz Shaw definitely has some brilliant moments in this. Especially when she's trying to identify in episode 3 of how these missing astronauts, of how they had a big massive radiation intake of 2 million reds, like an astronaut taking in 2 million reds of radiation. Now, that's a lot of radiation, to be honest with you. Like, if you were in a spaceship and you were surrounded by 1 million degrees, almost like going towards the sun, you would burn up instantly. But these astronauts were completely different. These astronauts weren't even human. And that's what I liked about episodes 2. Like, no matter what happened, even so when the recovery capsule landed in episode 2, Ralph Cornish, the Doctor and the Brigadier were trying to struggle to open up the capsule because the capsule wasn't responding. And so they brought it back to space control, and they decided to have another go at it. But at the moment of where they found Van Lyden's voice was actually talking, something strange was actually happening, and I actually noticed this straight away before the cliffhanger actually happened, where the title was going into the outro. And it was the voice. The voice had the same tone and the same high pitched, and so it really felt as the same voice repeating over and over again. And I honestly knew straight away that that was a tape recording, and Van Lyden is not in that space capsule. I honestly knew that straight away. And even so, nobody would have been in that capsule anyway, to be honest with you, because in episode 3, Liz Shaw actually identifies and discovers that the interior of the capsule is radioactive. It was on maximum. The Geiger counter was actually on maximum. Whoever was in there, human or not, they're as good as dead. So that really narrows down that that whatever came down in Recovery Capsule 7 certainly wasn't human. And these ambassadors aren't certainly human. And even so, in episode 6, they revealed themselves with, like, one of them actually took off their helmet and actually saw a fake glimpse of what the ambassadors actually look like blue, almost like a blue mutant's face, really. That's what I really liked, and I think they should have showed their face more, because I really wanted to identify their facial features or what they actually look like, but it would have been more hideous towards the people on television, but it would have been so interesting to see what they look like under all those spacesuits. That was really a good, and it was only a one-off moment. They didn't really open up their, their helmets at all, so it was actually a one-glimpse moment where they actually removed their helmets and saw what they looked like. So that was actually quite interesting. And also, what was interesting to me is that General Counter was explaining about how these astronauts that came down in Recovery Capsule 7, they actually explained of how this radiation that they were carrying was almost like a new kind of radiation that was more dependent with these ambassadors. So these ambassadors were actually dependent on this radiation, so they didn't need less radiation to stop them from dying, but instead they needed more. And so the ambassadors really became dependent on radiation to survive. If human beings were actually in those spacesuits, we would probably die because radiation destroys human tissues. See? GCSE Science, A star. Oh, I did actually get an A star in additional science, Just something there to look out for. I know my sciences. But yeah, I definitely think that this story certainly has some brilliant plot development, and I really like how the villains really cover up their game in this story. Like, no matter what the Doctor and the Brigadier suspect in this story, they really have no idea what's going on because they can't seem to gather any evidence on what they have, on what they find in the entire story. But then in episode 6, where the Brigadier explains to Professor Collins of what's already happened within the story, like he explains to Professor Collins of how Dr. Titanium killed, Liz Shaw kidnapped, these 3 astronauts still missing, and also this Dr. Lennox, who was actually killed in the Brigadier's headquarters, and somebody put an isotope in his cell. Well, speaking of Professor Lennox, I would have to say that his character is really agitated. I can really notice how agitated and how nervous he was when even talking to Regan, because no matter if Lennox did escape, Regan would automatically go on his game straight away, because Regan cannot trust Lennox, because you never know, Lennox could even go to units and tell the Brigadier what he's already planned out. So Regan was automatically ready to, kill Lennox if Lennox ever escaped. And so Lennox really felt really intimidated, really frightened of Regan trying to find out, what he's going to do, and if he's going to go to unit, then Regan's going to have to stop him immediately to cover up his game. So that's what I realised, that Regan doesn't let any prisoners alive. And so no matter whoever escapes, he automatically kills them straight away, because he's absolutely ruthless in this. So I think Dr. Lennox is really good in this, and I think his character really agitated. But what I really like about Dr. Lennox in this is that Dr. Lennox and Liz Shaw really have their bonds strengthened between episodes 3, 4 and 5. Now, what I like about Liz Shaw and Lennox's relationship, they completely know each other, but I really liked how Liz Shaw really had some determination with her personality in the story this time. In the previous story, she had more authority when talking to the Doctor, but she felt more determined than ever to persuade Dr. Lennox from actually coming with Liz Shaw and trying to escape. And so she was actually quite, authoritative to Dr. Lennox. Are you a prisoner here? And so she was almost interrogating him. But I really felt that they got along together really well, and I thought that was something new, that Liz Shaw really worked well by herself, but when she worked alongside Professor Lennox, they really had this sort of great bond. And that's what I really liked, because they really both seem like two scientists who just really want to survive and don't really want to get attacked by these ambassadors. But really, I think that both of them are really fantastic. I definitely really like this story, and I think the plot development really strengthens up within every single episode. And I certainly enjoy this story, and I think that, and as we will go to move on to the Brigadier's personality, I think in episode 6 he does really narrow down on what evidence he's gathered so far, and I really like how he's analysed everything, and he makes assumptions and suggestions of what actually you can gather from these evidence, and he really analyses and identifies many different clues within all of the conspiracies that's happened throughout the story. Dr. Tautalian killed, especially with that conspiracy, when Dr. Tautalian was actually killed, Regan actually gave him a device which was actually like a time bomb, so he could like set an amount of minutes and set it off without, you know, the doctor noticing that that briefcase was actually a time bomb. And so unfortunately Dr. Tautalian didn't set it right, and unfortunately that briefcase or that time bomb actually went off instantaneously, and so unfortunately he was killed just from that blast. And from that, the Brigadier analysed on what that compound was. It wasn't even issued to the army yet, and so that must have been that our own people must be involved. And so that's what I really like about how Dr. Tautalian wasn't killed by an alien species. He was actually killed by Regan, and so that really came up with some submissions that they really wanted to get Dr. Tautalian out of the way with, because if Dr. Tautalian ever continued with the story, the Doctor and the Brigadier would get more and more suspicious, and that he would be in a weak position of where he can give any authority. I think in episode 5, where the Doctor blasts up in recovery capsule, and he goes to the Mars probe and finds out what's happened to the missing astronauts for himself, just to really experience what has actually happened to these missing astronauts. But when he gets to the Mars probe, a huge unidentified object comes colliding with him, and he really gets invaded and attacked by this strange UFO. And so he really gets in, and he investigates this alien spaceship, and actually identifies and actually knows straight away that this could actually be the spaceship of these 3 astronauts, and these astronauts are completely different. But instead, the Doctor completely understands and talks to the captain of these alien beings, and understands of how these 3 astronauts are actually ambassadors. They're not killers, they're just ambassadors who just live in peace. And so the alien captain was like, why have you not returned our ambassadors to us? And so the Doctor was like, ambassadors? And so the aliens made an agreement, but the humans betrayed the aliens by stealing their astronauts, their ambassadors, down to Earth. But instead, they couldn't really let go of the humans, the human astronauts. So they kept them in the alien spaceship until those ambassadors were returned to them. And so also, this is where we see the astronauts unharmed and quite healthy, in good, perfect condition, but their minds were actually brainwashed when some strange music came on, and then the Doctor was like trying to flick their eyes and see if they blinked, and so they were under like some kind of mind conditioning thing. And then the Doctor really had a discussion with the captain of the aliens, and really guaranteed his absolute safety towards the 3 ambassadors, and really guaranteed his truce and his guarantee that he will bring back the ambassadors safe and sound. And so that's what I really liked about the Doctor. Like, the Doctor was so determined to help these aliens and to prevent these ambassadors from killing anybody, because these ambassadors are quite harmless and they don't really like to kill anybody. And so that's what I really like of how the Doctor's quite determined. He really wants to bring these ambassadors safe and unharmed, and so that's his really determination throughout the entire story. Episode 3, this is where the entire plot really starts to thicken up, and the Doctor actually gives an assumption of where the ambassadors or where these 3 astronauts are, and then he makes a suggestion that they're still in orbit. But then General Cameron's like, no, they can't be, I saw them. No, you saw 3 spacesuits. I didn't know what came down in Recovery Capsule 7, but it certainly wasn't human. And the ambassadors aren't certainly human at all. They're an alien intelligent life form. And I have to say that this story is so fantastic. I think the direction, Michael Ferguson did a brilliant job in this. And I have to say that the acting is really spectacular. I think Regan, really powerful with his acting, such a brutal and obedient and quite slick and quite swift character, which I really like, and he covers up his game really, really effectively, and he can prevent anybody from noticing that he is actually a massive saboteur, and he can actually affect the entire operation of the 3 missing astronauts. And so that's what I really like about Regan's character. And also with General Carrington, really powerful and on top authoritative figure in the entire story. Like, he feels like he's the top dog. He feels like that he can take care of the situation, and he does it for the best of the Earth. It's his moral duty to save the Earth from these aliens from invading the Earth, and he has like a top priority that he should call upon the nations of the world and destroy the spaceship, and also with the ambassadors as well. And so I think the general in the story is really fantastic, and he's planned this entire operation all the way down to the every last detail of it. And so I think that the General Carrington is really fantastic, and I think his acting is absolutely spectacular. He is so authoritative, really authoritative, very aggressive towards the Doctor and the Brigadier. Like, the Brigadier and the Doctor might suspect him of he could be behind of all of this, being the top dog and quite authoritative figure. And so nobody can actually put charges against General Carrington because he's the main authoritative figure. If anybody underestimates General Carrington, he could potentially put you under arrest. Simple as that. Because he's absolutely madly insane, and this is where his madly insane personality really kicked in with episode 5 and 6, of where he really wanted the UFO to be completely destroyed. He didn't matter about this Doctor or anything like that. He wanted the aliens to be completely obliterated. He doesn't care about them. He just wants to do his moral duty and to save the world. But yes, so he still really wants to destroy an alien life form, which the Doctor completely opposes. So I really like the General's obedience in this. I think he's so powerful, and I think the Brigadier is really good in this. I think he's really strong, and I think he analyses all the evidences and gives out brilliant discoveries on what you can learn from every single clue that's happened in the entire story. So he really narrows down on what's actually happened within the entire story and identify clues within those evidences. So I really liked how the Brigadier is really brilliant in this, and also with the fight scenes as well. He's absolutely brilliant in the fight scenes, and I think Havoc and the direction with the action scenes are absolutely done to perfection. Some brilliant television here, and I think the action is absolutely sublime. Really fantastic, and I really believe that the Doctor's and the Brigadier relationship is really well established right now, and I really feel like that they both can get along really, really well, and they really agree to what sort of happens. But these usually have the odd disagreements now and again, but I really see how the Doctor is really reliant on the Brigadier, and I can see how the Brigadier is really reliant on the Doctor, and so their comparisons are really, really similar, and I can really believe and really feel of how the Doctor's and the Brigadier's relationship is now, yes, well established. And so that's what I really like about their relationship in the story. Really powerful, and they really strengthen up their relationship together. Really good. And I have to say that the ambassadors are really, really scary, and even their look, even in episode 6 when they revealed their mask, really intimidating look. And I think their attacking force and their action in this story is really brilliant. Even so, when a soldier came up to the ambassador, one touch completely killed him instantly. These astronauts really seem so harmless, but yet so they are forced to kill by Drake Regan and everybody else. And so I really feel sorry for the ambassadors, but at least they get some revenge on stopping the telecast from General Carrington, calling upon the nations of the world to call out a mass scale attack. And so that's what I really like about the ambassadors. Like, they never give up, and also they are really, really intimidating. And I think episode 4 really showcases of how powerful and how intimidating an ambassador really is, and how much damage it can really do. And I think episode 4 cliffhanger is where Sir James actually gets killed by one of these ambassadors, and the Doctor actually comes into the room and looks at Sir James dead on the table, and then the ambassador just goes towards him and then has the big space gloves moving out towards the Doctor trying to kill him. That's really, really intimidating. And I think this entire story is really sensational. I think the plot development in the story is absolutely powerful, really strong, and it really strengthens up between every single episode. The writing, again, is really brilliant. And although David Whittaker didn't continue to write this story, but I think Malcolm Hulke and Trevor Ray really made the story watchable and yet engaging as well. Many people wouldn't think that this story is one of the best, but would have to say that there are some brilliant potential good elements in this that I really like, especially with the good characterization, the plot development, and even so the good direction and the action. Brilliant. And again, I have to say, I love the unit music. I have to use it in my videos more often because I absolutely love the unit music so much. And I think since we're going into the age and into the dawns of unit appearing in every single Doctor Who story, I actually might change my intro to fit a unit theme to have in the intro, and that would really make it 1970s. So yeah, that's what I might do. But I really enjoy this entire story, because I think, although with the lack of writing, I think David Whittaker did a really good job of making episode 1 really engaging. But unfortunately, I think with many people's perspectives, they really didn't like the writing of how Malcolm Hulke and Trevor Ray really continued this story. But I completely disagree. I really think that the story is really fantastic, and I think there's so many good potential elements in it that I really like. And I really think that this story is still fantastic without David Whittaker's intervention with every single episode. I still think that it's a brilliant, sensational story. And my rating, it would have to be a 9.5 out of 10. I wouldn't give it a straight 10 out of 10 because I really do believe that the writing is absolutely necessary, absolutely crucial for a Doctor Who story. And I think since there was loads of problems with the scripts and the writing as well, it kind of falls down on the ratings. But I would have to say that the plot development, the characterization, and also the action scenes are absolutely brilliant. And I have to say the full marks for those as well. And so I really like the Doctor, and also Liz Shaw. Unfortunately, she gets kidnapped and she gets mainly trapped with Regan and Dr. Lennox within episodes 3, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. She really just stays there for most of the episodes. But I really like how her determination to escape, and also to help Professor Lennox and help these astronauts from... And so she's really dependent on, you know, on the Doctor's help. But I really feel like that the Doctor is absolutely brilliant in this, and I think both of them, they work so well together, and I think their relationship really strengthens up again in this episode. And I really like how Liz Shaw is just so fantastic with her great scientific moments in this, and I really liked her determination and her authority in this story. I think she was absolutely brilliant. And I think the Doctor, his determination, his confidence, and he offered his service to go up in the recovery capsule, and he has so many suspicions on how Liz Shaw is being captured. She's being kept hold prisoner. People actually threatening the Doctor to stop interfering, otherwise we will kill Liz Shaw. And so he gets quite nervous when, you know, he gets that reply. But I really feel that the Doctor really is so determined in this story, and I think he's absolutely wonderful in this. And again, in all of the performances he's done in season 7, I think Doctor in Salorians is one of his best performances. I would have to say that this is another brilliant performance by John Pertwee. I think he's absolutely wonderful. And I think all of the characters in this are absolutely good. And especially one character who is the news reporter. And if you know the news reporter, the actor name, Michael Wisher, what does that remind you in your head? Davros in Genesis of the Daleks? Yes, the same actor who played Davros in Genesis of the Daleks actually appeared in the story many couple of times, and she gave news bulletins and really kept us intact on what already happened within the previous story, and keeps us up to date on what's already happened. So that's one interesting thing I really need to mention out. And I really liked how he really introduced us and really explained that he was almost like a news reporter, but I really liked how he really explained and really described what was actually happening in full, complete detail, and I really like that. And I think I'm just blabbering on about this story too much, but I certainly have to say that this story is certainly underrated because many people really overshadowed this story so much. But I have to say I really like this story, and I think this is another guilty pleasure of mine, and I think it's one of those stories that many people really need to have another rewatch at, because I feel like that although with the writing maybe a bit low and a bit poor from David Whittaker, but I think Malcolm Hulke and Trevor Ray at least do a brilliant and enjoyable story, and I certainly have enjoyed this story for so many reasons. I just really love this story. Anyway guys, that is my review on The Ambassadors of Death. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please do give a like, but also comment your views on this story. Please give out your any ratings if you have about this story. And please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I really enjoyed doing this review. And although it took me about 3 watches of The Ambassadors of Death to get the full information in, and now the next review, we're going to be moving on to the absolute thriller story of Season 7. The epic story that is Project Inferno. So please stay tuned for more for that review. But also, just before I go, I have 2 announcements. One, I have a video to do for All Things Doctor Who, which that will appear on All Things Doctor Who in a video called Why Have We All Become to Love Doctor Who? And I'll be telling you my honest opinions of why I've gone to love Doctor Who and why I love it so much, and how it's become a big part of my life and I love it so much. And so please stay tuned for that. But also on the Doctor Who guide, I may put the link in the description down below to check out that video. I will be also doing a video on my top 3 favourite stories of Series 9 to recommend to you guys for the Doctor Who guide and his channel, because he's doing a new series and he really wants to introduce many other people to introduce on his channel and really give people so many opinions on different stories to give on each season, probably from season 1 all the way down to the new series in series 10. And so if you really want to still be in the Doctor Who Guide's new series, then please go to his channel straight away and really email to him of what series you really want to do, because I have to say that I'm really excited to do a video on his channel and really recommend to you guys what are my favourite 3 stories that I like from Series 9. And I really wanted to give you this news straight away, because I will be doing for the next couple of days my recordings for All Things Doctor Who and why I've become to love Doctor Who, and also to tell you my opinions and my 3 best stories of Series 9 for the Doctor Who guys channel. And so I will put links in the description down below to check out the All Things Doctor Who and the Doctor Who guide for more exciting Doctor Who content. So please definitely check out those channels. And please, if you are ever new to my channel, please do hit that subscribe button, because I really mean it, because I'm absolutely eccentric to continue with my Doctor Who marathon. And if you are big fans of Project Inferno, then please stay tuned on my channel, because that review will be coming soon. I really will like to get Inferno completely reviewed and out of the way with. It may be a completely big review. And so guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later for my in-depth review on Inferno. So guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.